Hey trader, I trust this finds you on the rise. I'm going to do a series of videos, probably should have done this ages ago, but I'm doing this to walk you through the entire trading week and show how Lonenin9 structures price movement. I will try and do these weekly, but don't hold me to it though. Believe me when I tell you this, I'm not doing this to create the illusion of prediction, and this isn't hindsight promises either. I simply want to showcase Lonenin9 mechanically by observing what happened, showing how price interacts with the framework, and how the structure can integrate into your own trading process. We'll look at, well, rather I'll show you how price moves between predefined boundaries, what happens when they hold, what happens when they fail, and how authority shifts from one side of the structure to the other. If you follow along on your own charts, you'll notice this isn't random. The boundaries define behavior. Let's go through the week and see what happened. Price opens the week on the major 1 solid boundary, but immediately pushes down through the dotted level and then the solid. Asia pushes downward into the major 2 solid boundary, and we get a strong body close beyond its solid level. This is the first shift into the next structural boundary of the week. Price begins to drift lower, bodies are small and conviction is limited. That's compression at structure. When a solid boundary holds, price rotates back toward the opposing structural boundary. So structure, this becomes a boundary rotation inside the framework. London pushes higher above the Asia major 2 solid and quickly lower it pierces the minor 2 solid boundary. Price sweeps the solid level briefly and quickly back up to opposing structure. We don't see expansion through it, so that's not a structure failure, it's a sweep. Price moves back above. When solid levels are swept but quickly reclaimed, the boundary is still respected. But expansion to an opposing structure is likely. Quick rotation to where we began, so structurally we remain inside the same framework. This is a liquidity sweep behavior, not a break. US inherits the Asia structure and trades into its top boundary structure. Strong rejection of the solid level and trades back to the middle of structure. No decisive close beyond the upper solid. Feels like a liquidity sweep again, and expansion below the dotted boundary. This authority is shifting into an opposing boundary structure. When a boundary fails with conviction, price simply cascades into the opposing boundary and rotates between them. Small rotation between minor 2 solid and dotted, then a sweep of the major 2 solid and a run up to the solid of minor 2. A close beyond the solid level of my major 2, indicates an authority shift to the upside. Compression at resistance into structure follows, and Monday ends the way it began, contained between predefined boundaries. Asia opens box inside Monday's framework, solid below and dotted above. Price pushes towards the minor 2 solid boundary. Price tests again, no expansion beyond it. When the solid boundary holds, price often rotates back into the opposing structure. Drift lower begins and a low is set at the major 1 solid and rotates to its solid level above. Asia behaves as a boundary rotation inside the same operating range. Price pushes higher again. London presses into the major 1 solid boundary once more. Then a solid push towards the Asia low. Price pushes through, feels like a liquidity sweep. Price didn't close beyond the solid boundary, so no structural shift. A retest of the low is taken on the dotted major 2. A clean close beyond a solid level changes the structure. That's another meaningful structure shift of the week. When the solid boundary fails with conviction, authority begins transferring upward. Price continues pushing. The top is formed just below the major 1 solid. Price pushes off the dotted major 1 boundary and presses through the solid major 1 boundary to the solid level above. Trace back into structural range to continue higher to the top formed earlier of the major 1 solid boundary. A rotation back towards the major 1 solid boundary and pushes down to rotate near the dotted but misses by a smidgen. Price pushes up towards highs at the major 2 solid compresses at major 1 solid and sweeps at the dotted just before close. So Tuesday ends on the upper structure of London's dotted boundary levels, and that's Tuesday testing our boundaries. This introduces authority shift behavior. Asia opens position between dotted below and solid above, changes structurally and pushes off the -2 dotted. Price pushes higher, first high form just below the solid, pushes off the dotted -2 again toward the upper solid boundary. Price rotates downwards inside the structure and sweeps through the -2 dotted boundary. That's another liquidity sweep rather than a structural break. Price quickly moves up, back through the solid boundary, closes with conviction above the solid boundary. That's authority transfer to the upside. Price then tops out of compressing on and below the solid boundary. Notice hesitation and no conviction. London Open sweeps down the Asia to the Asia low on the dotted 2 minor, and price pushes up and clears tops of the -2 solid above the highs. Opposing structural rotation of the -1 dotted above and -2 dotted. London begins pushing higher within the structure. This move now approaches the upper dotted boundary. Price removes previous highs. The move also removes prior session high at structure. That's an important structural clue. Close beyond dotted boundary signals upward continuation towards the next and opposing solid level boundary structure. This is another example of authority transfer upward. Price approaches upper solid. The US session now presses into the next solid boundary. No expansion with conviction. Price drives down to the opposing boundary. Pushes back upwards off the dotted -2 to clear the early highs. Wednesday then ends compressing and sweeps between the solid boundaries of -2. Wednesday testing higher boundaries. This introduces structural reclaim behavior. Price opens on the solid boundary and pushes lower, sweeps down to clear the US end of session low on the major 1 solid, rotates just below the dotted and drifts lower into the -2 solid. Notice the bodies are small and conviction is limited. That's again compression into opposing structure. So no decisive break, no shift in authority. A strong close above -2 solid before London opens indicates a shift in authority to the upside. London opens on the -2 solid and pushes through prior session highs at structure to rotate at major 2 solid. Rotates at the dotted boundary of -2 and oscillates between the dotted boundaries of these two structures for the rest of the session. US opens on -2 solid, pushes higher and off the major 2 dotted, pushes down to the opposing dotted boundary of -2, but a close beyond the solid boundary of major 2 indicates an authority shift downward. Retest fails and price then reclaims the major 2 boundary structure. Price pushes high into the opposing boundary, clears previous cluster highs at structure, and closure beyond the major 2 solid and rotates on dotted boundary. Price pushes back upward off the -2 dotted and tops at the major 2 solid to end the day just off the -2 dotted. Thursday again testing higher boundaries and exercises structural reclaim. Asia opens box between solid above and dotted below. Price pushes toward the -2 solid boundary. Solid holds from below, quickly pushes upward. That immediately introduces counter rotation potential. A close beyond the major 1 solid indicates a shift in transfer. Rotation off the dotted confirms continuation downward. Rotation upward begins and tops at the -2 dotted. London Open drives back into the opposing structure. And pushes off the major 2 dotted. Price quickly pushes higher and clears session high at structure, followed by a quick rotation off the -2 dotted and a reaction at the dotted above. Price drifts lower, compressing between major 2 boundaries and back up towards the upper structure. The upper boundary tests again and pushes lower, rotates back up off the -2 solid to the structure above, but rotates back down to the opposing structure of major 2 dotted. A rotation again adds structure to the upside and tops out of the major 1 dotted boundary. Cascading into opposing structure follows with a continuation of the major 2 dotted, forming a low off the -2 solid and back into structure. That ends the week inside a upper structure and introduces counter rotation within structure. So, to recap what we've seen across the week, Monday it was containment and rotation inside structure. Tuesday, first test and upward authority shift. Wednesday we saw sweeps and continuation higher. Thursday compression resolved into structural failure. Friday we had the balancing and rotation back into structure. If you step back and look at the week, the same framework repeated session after session. Price moved between boundaries. When structure held, price rotated. When it failed, authority shifted. When boundaries were swept, without expansion, structure remained intact. And when compression built, it eventually resolved into movement. There's nothing protective in that. That's structure. It's mechanical behavior driven by boundary movement. And very importantly, it's how I see it. That might sound a bit salesy and probably makes me sound a bit arrogant, but I promise you it's not meant to be. It's just something I've developed over time and made my own, and in the hope that it would help someone else see the market a bit clearer. Working with something like this removes a lot of noise. It builds consistency and confidence, and it gives you a clearer way to make decisions without second guessing every move. In the next video, we'll go through another week and you'll see the same framework repeat again, regardless of the market or conditions. That's it for now, and I hope at least you saw something you can take away with you and apply on your journey. Cheers.